Hi everyone, welcome to An Hour with LawSikho. Today I have with me Smita Tandon, who has been a HR manager for like almost like 25 years, and she's going to share. Today I have with me Smita Tandon, who has been HR manager for. Okay, sorry for the interruption. So what I was saying is that we are going to talk today about the various problems that HR managers face with respect to labor laws, because this is something that they deal with very frequently. Like one of the functions is obviously compliance related to labor laws, and even without apart from compliances, there are a number of other things where labor law can arise. The questions of labor law can arise, starting from signing agreements with employees to maybe a disciplinary action against a certain person. It could be even sexual harassment complaint, or there are a number of things in which HR managers do have to deal with labor laws, and sometimes even inspectors and courts and whatnot. So today we have Smita with us, who's going to share her experiences, and she has worked with HUL for 2.5 decades. So let's hear directly from Smita. Welcome, Smita.
Hi, thank you, Ramanuj, and thank you everyone who is joining in. First of all, let me give you a brief introduction. I am Smita Tandon, and I was working with Hindustan Unilever for close to 2.5 decades, as Ramanuj has just said, and handling very uh, core business vertical of HUL, where I was responsible for resourcing, compliance, engagements, capability building, and it was a more of a generalistic profile. And recently, I have started my own freelancing consulting in the area of Posh. So, since this is my second career inning, I thought that my second inning should be something which is meaningful, not only to me, but to society as well. And as we have been seeing post Nirbhaya case, there have been quite a few, not quite a few, almost every day. There's so many unfortunate incidents that you hear about. So it is very important for us as a society to be aware of how the law can protect us, and how if we know the law, how we can make a difference. So this was one area where I was interested and have started working in this. And today we will be discussing, as Ramanaju said, what are the problems we are facing with respect to labor laws.
Absolutely. So, before I go into all of that, I want to ask you, this is very unusual in today's world. We don't know anybody who has worked in the same company for 25 years. So tell us more about that. Like, how was it? I mean, it is almost like, unheard of thing in today's world.
It is unheard of, yes. But the time when I joined, way back in 1993, there were people who were retiring from that company. It was more like a family than a job, workplace where you just go and come back. Uh, HUL is a dream company for anyone, and I'm sure the people who joined at that time would have always dreamt of retiring from that place. The kind of atmosphere that you get and the kind of care the management takes for its employees, it's unmatchable. And the standards, the security, safety, everything is taken care of, and especially for women.
That is really fantastic. So can you
Yes.
tell us a little more about that? You have been an HR manager, so you must have been like really a part of that and somebody who contributed to creating that kind of an environment. So what is the uh,
So
this secret?
let me correct you here, Ramanuj. I was not the HR manager. I joined HUL as a secretary. I was working with the regional HR manager at that time. And during the course of employment, I did an MBA in personnel management. It was not HR at that time, it was personnel management. And later on, you know, I started developing interest in HR and got involved in a lot of HR activities, got promoted, and I was working as an executive at an executive level.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So back to my question, I got it. Now,
Yeah.
what's the real secret mantra behind this? Why people don't leave HUL for so many years?
You would never leave good parents. Definitely not. And as I said before, also, that the kind of care, concern, safety, security you get. I mean, salary and perks are all secondary things. The most important is the kind of, the safety and security, I think, are main issues which are concerning everyone. You get a lot of independence to do a lot of things. You are encouraged to take risks. You're encouraged to, apply your own thoughts at workplace, even if it means loss for a business for a short time. But you're allowed to do a lot of, risk taking. So this company gives you a lot of exposure in number of things and helps you to develop in your own ways.
Security issue, like you mentioned safety and security of the job, I believe. So how does that work? Because today in this world, like in generally we are used to this hiring and firing kind of situation where people are regularly let go, and we are seeing this mass firing from jobs from big companies like TCS and Take Mahindra and like some of the biggest employers in the country. So what's this? How is this possible, and how does this work? Like, what do you mean when you say safety and security of the job?
Uh, Thankfully, things are not such in HUL, even today. There is no hiring and firing as such. People, join happily, leave happily. There's never been heard of hiring and hiring there. So that is one thing. And secondly is you're encouraged to take a lot of, independent decisions. So you're not scared of taking decisions. That by that I mean this, you get a sense of security that even if my things go wrong, I'll not be fired for it.
Very good. And when you say that they are very caring, I mean, I get that this is a part of the caring bit, but what else? Like, what's so special about it?
Uh, Caring bit, you're like a family there. It's there have been so many instances. Uh, I Immediately after I had joined there, I had a major problem, illness, and I was in hospital for about 6 months. I was sure that I would lose my job, but instead, not only I was paid full salary, but the management ensured that someone from the office would come and meet me at least twice a week, just to make me feel good and just to assure you of your job.
Wow, that's
So
quite
there's so many such instances like this.
okay.
On my family way, things like, working from home, these things were not heard of before. But way back in 1996 and 99, we were allowed to work from home, take calls at home, manage whatever things, go home early. So if the company does so much for you, then you feel like, yeah, why not? Why should I, go to other places?
Great. Like as somebody I'm a CEO of a company. I'm trying to create a organization. So for us also, this is like That's why I was so curious and asked you so many prodding questions about it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
back to our subject of discussion. So labor laws is not something that people normally would want to learn. I mean, it's one of the boring things even law students kind of
Yes.
like hate. And when you have to study labor laws, it's something that nobody is like, people say I want to learn corporate law, I want to, I am passionate about intellectual property law, but I've never heard anybody saying that I want to be a labor lawyer, or I love labor law. This is what inspires me. To be honest, when I was in college, I really liked labor law, but I felt that it is taught in a very boring way. But beyond that, like, I have literally I'm probably the guy who liked labor law the most in my class. And generally speaking, labor law is something that people don't like. I mean, something that they don't even consider to be, interesting, or something that they want to specialize in, or something that they want to learn. Yeah, if you if your career takes you into it, you get into it, kind of situation. Um, so that's how lawyers look at it. We have been running courses for managers, and I've heard a lot of stories from them. And while we try to create these courses, we do go talk to a lot of players in the industry and get their feedback on these things. And what I find like the uniform thing, and Indian labor law especially is considered to be very complex and very, like, overwhelming. There are less too many laws and too many rules, and under the rules also there are some regulations, and there are a lot of new kind of uh, notices being brought out, and new systems being put in place. And like every time there's a new government, they say that they're going to reform the labor laws, but nothing has really changed in all these years. So in light of that, I just want you to share from the perspective of a HR manager, how do you look at labor law? I believe that you have to do some labor law when you are in. I mean, you said that you did personal management course, and I mean,
Yes, yes,
you know,
yes.
do you deal with it in, like, do you get trained in labor laws in any way whatsoever?
So, Ramanuj, as you said, that labor laws is a very scary subject for anyone. Uh, One reason is that thora of laws. There are about 50 labor laws we can count, and one thing which is there is that the most of these labor laws are outdated. They were, made. Some of them were made in the pre-independence time. Payment of Wages Act in 1936. Then there
So
was Trade
interesting.
Union Act of 1926.
Smita, just one thing I wanted to share, one just
Yeah.
trivia actually, is that the first law that was made after the Indian, like, independent government came into power and the parliament started functioning, the first law that was made was a labor law. That was the Industrial Disputes Act of 1947, because
Yes.
making the labor laws was highest priority of government of India the moment it came into power, because before that there are all laws which are extremely against labor unions, and generally employee anti-employee laws were there in the colonial times. So these were the first laws that were made, and I think after
But
that,
but ironically, we were following the laws which were set in the British era also.
absolutely many of the
Yeah.
things are.
Yes. 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 Workmen Compensation Act. I mean, there are so many such laws. Then there were, laws which came out post independence also. Most of these laws are outdated. I mean, there have been rules, revisions, but basically the gist of these laws are outdated. So
So
something
I
which
think
you
that's
cannot
very
relate
important.
to.
Yeah, Smita, just one
Yeah.
point on that. That's a very relevant thing you have said, that, these were laws which were made before independence. So if we look at our economy back then, it was
Mhm.
agrarian economy, which the labor law did not deal with. And then
Correct.
you have the factories, the mills in Bombay, and, like, jute mills in Calcutta, and, like, basically factories, that to mills, not
Mhm.
even modern factories that we know as factories. It's a very
Mhm.
different situation there, and all the laws were made for that. So now our major, like, the biggest chunk of our economy is the services economy, and, like, the services industry, and even, other industries. So what about that? Has there been any changes in the laws to keep up with the changing times, in your experience?
Absolutely, absolutely. Our labor laws are flooded with amendments. Every day there is a new amendment. And the number one challenge which HR managers face is tracking those amendments. And I think the one big everyone is facing is that we are not able to keep up to date with the amendments. HR managers do not know labor laws. Even if they know, they're not able to keep track of it. And in what happens is that they mess up everything, and then they turn to legal for help as to what should we do now that we have messed up things.
Right. So, what are the usual mess ups? What are the usual areas of mess up where such mess ups are happening?
Mostly the mess up is happening when you're, in disciplinary cases, in retrenchment cases, things like this. When you don't take the proper procedure, don't go by the proper guidelines. So that's how,
So that's a very interesting part of something you said, that there is this disciplinary proceeding. Let's take this to start with. So,
Mhm.
how does a disciplinary proceeding happens from the point of view of an HR?
So a disciplinary process has to happen in a very systematic manner. There has to be, a proper notice given to an employee. He should be given a proper chance to reply to it, and he should have a proper say in the matter. But what the HR managers generally do, they bring a lawyer inside it and send a notice and messing up things. So
All
what the
right. I
law
think
says is that everyone should have a proper say in it.
right. A hearing is very important. The party has to
Yes,
be given
yes, yes.
to explain
Yes,
themselves.
yes, yes, yes. You should go by
Okay.
the principles of natural justice, which doesn't happen most of the time. You
So, I
already
would
have made up the mind to, send that person home. And then you take your proceedings according to that.
right. So, that's something I guess an organization will try to address by having a policy in place. So, what
Mhm.
sort of policies did you have at HUL with respect to dealing with disciplinary proceedings?
So HUL, we had a very, very stringent and very, very, uh, proper policies, I would say. Nothing could happen, ever happen, without going as per the guidelines.
Right.
Even if all the states, I mean, HUL factories are spread all across India. You can find HUL factories in almost all states of India. And the state-wise rules do apply, but policy for as per the policy matters, we had to go by the policy, what the policy says.
Of course. So the policy was already there in place for you to take the right calls in such circumstances.
Yes,
So,
yes.
okay, so like, what would you say? Like, are the circumstances where a company has to go for a disciplinary proceeding? Why not just fire the person under the contract? Like, everybody's contract agreement always has some sort of you know um, letting go a person without a due cause, like maybe you have to give a month's notice or 3 months notice. So you can always give a person a notice and let them go without giving a specific reason. So why do you need disciplinary proceeding?
What are unions for then? How can you just send a person home without, without giving a proper reason?
Okay, so
Yeah,
unions are still there in manufacturing companies, but
yes.
you don't have unions in other companies, and it's the common practice today in is that, and it is backed by law. It's not
Yes,
illegal. That if
yes.
somebody is working and the company, for whatever what's any reason whatsoever, cannot retain the person, they
Mhm.
can with a serve the notice for a few months and let them go. So the option one is that option. So why would somebody actually take up a discipline?
That's a proper way to do it. I think we should all appreciate that government has made laws because that's a proper way to do it. You just cannot, do things as per your own will and wish. And it's always better in the long run for the, sustainability of the company to go as per the laws and rules. So if you are taking a shortcut, you are, digging a hole for yourself only.
Right. Okay. Okay. So, what's your experience with respect to policies? Like, how to, what are the essential policies for a company? If you can throw some light on that. And generally, companies stumble quite a lot with respect to making the right policies. So, if you can tell us from your experience. What are the potholes and what are the challenges?
So, like I said, that we have laws for everything. For excuse me.
Yes, sure, sure, no problem. Take your time.
So we have policies for policies are there for just give me a time. So policies are there for betterment of the individual employees, for management, and we have policies on all possible subjects. Uh,
Right.
yeah.
So, what
So
would you say are the 10
it gives a direction to the management
right?
as well as to the employees.
So, what would you say are the most important policies? Like, let's say if somebody is running let's say a startup for a moment, or
Mhm.
somebody is running a manufacturing unit for that matter. What are the 10 most essential policies that they must have in place, according to you?
The policies
The policies
should be with respect to
should be with respect
to the working
to
time,
working time,
the employment rules.
the employment rules. Right. So, I guess there should be an entire policy regarding their work
Yes, work
conditions,
conditions.
with yes, work conditions. Right, like time and like leave and holidays and all of
Absolutely.
that. Absolutely. Okay. What are the other very like? Of course, you must be. You can talk about the sexual harassment policy that has become a legal obligation right now.
Yes.
Not having that can land
Yes.
people in jail.
Yes.
But what would be the other ones apart from these two?
All the benefits that
All
you
the
know.
benefits that
The voice is
the
echoing.
voice is echoing.
Voice is echoing
Is
back.
it fine now? Back. Is it fine?
One second. Yeah, it's okay now. So all the benefits that we are extending to the employees, all the responsibilities that we are expecting from them should be documented. Documentation of policy is must, so that the employees are also clear as to what are their benefits, what are their obligations.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the challenges companies are facing with respect to implementing sexual harassment laws?
Challenges companies are
Challenges
facing.
companies are facing with respect to sexual harassment laws, implementing sexual harassment laws.
Okay.
Okay.
The challenges
The
that companies.
challenges that companies.
Uh, it's again echoing back, Ramanujan. Is it
Sorry.
okay?
Is it okay?
No, I'm hearing back my voice. Can
No,
you hear me
it
properly?
should be. Can you hear me properly? Yeah, I can hear you very clearly. There is no
Can
problem.
you hear me properly?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So the challenges that companies are facing with respect to sexual harassment is one major problem is that they're not aware of the law. Even if they're aware of the law, what they feel is that it is not necessary. It is not mandatory. So we have to really convince them that it is mandatory. It is for the benefit not only for women but for all the employees to be aware of it. Setting up the ICC, the Internal Complaints Committee, getting the members on board, getting women employees on board, because more than 50%, it has to be a 50-50 ratio. Getting an external member for the same, because getting a right external member is also very important, because that is a person who can give a right direction.
So
In case of
according to you,
investigation, yeah.
investigation, yeah. So according to you, who would be the right kind of external expert in the internal committees of sexual harassment committee?
So the need for external member was that a person should this committee should be a non-biased one. So external member should be someone who is non-biased, who has knowledge of the law, who can empathize with women-related issues,
Related issues.
and
And
and be someone who is, excuse me,
Yeah, it's all right. Don't worry. You can. It's fine. I think this
excuse
is
me.
the first time for on screen for you, I guess.
Yes, yes,
So
yes,
it's,
yes.
it's absolutely fine. And you know what? When I speak so much on the screen, even I tend to have I make sure that I keep some water, because like this is just very common when you keep talking for a long period of time, especially if you're not used to. This is like just happens. So just take your time,
Excuse me. Yeah.
relax. It's absolutely fine. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
No, it's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So yeah, I mean, if we can get back to this, so the sexual harassment law was created in 2013, and
Yes.
since then, yes, like implementation, I think has been very loose in terms of, there are people filing sexual harassment complaints, and there are some kind of mechanisms in place. For a long time, the government did not appoint district level committees, which was a one major issue. There was supposed to be certain annual compliances. It is not clear whether the companies are doing those annual compliances or not. So there's a whole host of issues around sexual harassment implementation. So what, in your experience, do you think companies are really implementing this? Because we, like you said it a bit, you touched on it, that they're treating it more like a compliance checkbox rather than actually implementing it. So what are they trying to do? How are they getting around this? This is mandatory. I mean, this is mandatory. You don't have to convince them that this is mandatory because the law says so. But if they are not following it, is there any repercussion? Like, one repercussion is that when there is a sexual harassment, if they don't have a committee, then people may go to the police, or that. But in the end of the day, what is the accountability, and what's your experience with respect to?
So the Sexual
So
Harassment
the
Act
Sexual Harassment
came
Act
came
came
in
in.
2013. But prior to that, there were Vishakha guidelines, which were not followed by any of the companies. Most of the companies, I would say, not any of the companies. Only the progressive ones were, them in place. And luckily for us, HUL was following the Vishakha guidelines as well as sexual harassment much before 2013. We had all these policies in place. So what the law says is that or any company which has more than 10 employees has to have a POSH committee in place, has to follow the sexual harassment laws, has to have an ICC in place, has to do the trainings, mandatory trainings for all the employees, separate capability trainings for the ICC members. Uh, the fines were defined, but the fine was not too much to scare a company. The fine is 50,000 in case of any offense. But what companies do not know is that in case of second offense or third offense, your business license can also be cancelled. This should be enough to scare a company. That is at stake. We have seen so many companies where just because of one case, the entire company is doomed. Uh, that is why it is important, to not only for the compliance purpose, but also to be socially more conscious on these issues.
On
We should
these
follow this
issues.
law in spirit, not only in compliance.
Sure, got that. So, when, like, you have been helping companies to comply with these laws. So, what are the areas in which companies usually require help?
So the areas that companies require help are mainly in the areas of training of all the employees, capability building for their ICC team, setting up the ICC team, forming their policies. The policies should not only be formed but also informed to all the people. Then, in case of any investigation, if there is a complaint, then the investigation needs to be done for which an external member is required. So these are the areas where an external person can help and give expertise on these areas.
All right. So, if in case there is actually a sexual harassment complaint, then how does the company handle it?
Ideally, any sexual harassment complaint, if the company receives, the law says it should be kept confidential. The confidentiality clause is a must here. So, a woman, in case she has filed a complaint, she can go to HR, but ideally, she should go to an ICC. But if they have not formed an ICC, the company should immediately form an ICC, and the complaint should come to them, and there is a proper mechanism for the complaint to be closed. There is a time limit that the complaint has to be closed within 90 days period within which the inquiry has to be completed, uh, and an action has to be taken and information sent to the employer as to what action has been taken.
Okay, and how to conduct the hearing and how to record the evidence and stuff like that, because those are things that neither HR managers nor those are very technical things, because it may be challenged in later stages, the evidence that is collected. So how is this all actually done in a
So evidence, whatever evidence is available, we try to record those evidence, whether in form of a letter, in form of an email or WhatsApp, or any witnesses, if anyone has seen anything unfortunate happening to someone. So these evidences are recorded by way of proofs from the witnesses or any emails, etc., that we receive. So it all goes as per the principles of natural justice. Whatever evidence that we can collect, we try to question as many people to get more and more information. But what the major problem that we face is that collecting the evidence. Women doesn't have the evidence most of the time, so that takes a lot of time. To really get into the depth of the case.
I have a question there. Like, is the committee supposed to do an investigation? Like, there are two different things between actually hearing a case where people are coming and giving you information and evidences. Another thing is that you yourself go and start investigating. Because I understand that if you start investigating as a committee, that may lead to because you cannot, when you start investigating, you become involved with one party, because that kind of compromises your independence. As a the judge cannot investigate. I mean, at least this is the fundamental. There are countries where the judge is supposed to investigate, but in India the judge cannot investigate. You have to be absolutely non-partisan. So if you start investigating, it's like you are responsible for working for one party. So that's kind
Right.
of
And
not well appreciated in Indian legal system. So do you think that could be a pitfall in terms of the committee starting to investigate?
no, it's not really so. By investigation, I mean that when we are doing the inquiry, we really have to dig through a lot of details and get to the root of the problem as to how it started. Get the witnesses, talk to people. So the ICC is, double hatting both the jobs.
Got it. But like, I am still a little, wondering about this. That if to what extent, like, if the parties fail to give any evidence, let's say the woman cannot bring any evidence, and the other side is also not able to bring any evidence. So what do? In a normal court of law, it will get dismissed. Nobody. I mean,
Yes, yes.
so how does it happen here?
We look for any prior complaints against that person. What is his history? Has there ever been any complaints against him? If not, then you really cannot do much about it.
Okay. All right. So. So tell me a little more about your experience with respect to social media and employees, because this is creating a new area of problem where employees go and talk about things on social media, and write things on social media, post pictures on social media, which can compromise the interests of a company. So, what are your thoughts on this as an HR and from the perspective of labor law also? I mean, there's no law on this that actually prevents employees from doing this, but most of the time, you either create a policy dealing with it or you put this in your employment agreement. So, how are companies dealing with this situation?
You cannot stop an employee from going on social media, as you rightly said, and a person is free to do whatever he wants to write on media, whatever his views are, post pictures. But generally, what we keep telling employees on day-to-day basis is that it is not right to, talk about political views or talk about uh, the company as such. So we have a policy in place in HUL that prohibits an employee to talk about HUL on social media. But other than that, if there is any personal thing that they are doing it, we really cannot stop it.
No, of course, no. There is no need. It's out of question to stop. We cannot stop them from posting their own
Yes.
selfies or
Yes.
whatever they believe in. But the problem that happens is usually sometimes employees, that the few problems that has happened is that they start writing about their grievances on social media, or they start criticizing a certain company policy on social media, and these are the usual areas of problem. So
Yes.
how are the companies today dealing with such issues?
Uh, that's a very difficult thing to answer because it's just counseling that works in such works. So one-to-one counseling with that person, with the HR manager, or with anyone who is comfortable and he is comfortable, that that may help. Yes.
Sure. Okay, and also I think most companies are creating their social media policies also. I mean, that
Yes.
may take things addressed to an extent.
Hmm.
Okay. So there's a new labor law code coming in. Now, you are saying that there are too many different labor laws, very difficult to
Yes.
keep track of. And this, because of
There's
this, I think, yeah, there's a new labor law code which is being created by the government, and it has been promised that before the next election it will also be implemented. It remains to be seen if that actually happens. But if that happens, like, how do you see this, the entire HR fraternity dealing with this? Because it will be like a huge change from one end to another end. So, and there may be substantial changes in the law. So how is the HR fraternity seeing this, as a positive or negative, or what's the sense?
So, as we said in the beginning, that most of these HR labor laws are, pre-independence time, due for, revision and, changes for a long, long time. And it's only recently that things about amalgamating these laws into four different codes, as you just said. The proposal is underway, and we are all anxiously waiting for it to come into action. I mean, there are about 38 to 40 laws which are proposed to be amalgamated into these four codes. So definitely it will make life simple because there will be a lot of rationalization in how these codes work and how these. I mean, instead of 8 to 10 registers, you'll have to just maintain one register. Instead of 10 documents, you'll have to just file one return. So in if you have to make in India campaign successful, you really have to go about making workplaces more employer friendly, the labor laws more employer friendly, because ease of doing business, we are still far, far, far behind. So if you want to attract more and more companies, we have to be more labor laws friendly. We are creeping up
Okay,
fingers
so
crosses.
all right. So, so I got that. Now, what are your major expectations from the code? Like, in what ways do you think One is that, yeah, I understand that it's going to be simplified and fewer laws. But beyond that, are you expecting any major changes in any labor law after?
Major changes, uh, not really. It will be, as I just said, it will be, instead of 10 things, we'll have to do one, but it will cover all the points. There are not going to be many changes, but those things which are irrelevant these days, like overtime, I think it's due for, revision. Who works 48 hours in a week these days? Excuse me.
So, okay, so Indian labor laws is standing on the verge of a major reforms, and what is the expectation in terms of digitalization? Like, most of the laws, like Companies Act and the entire compliances, have fully gone online, and there is this MCA 21 portal, and everything is so much simpler these days with respect to companies' law compliance. Are you expecting some changes in labor law compliances in that way? Because even now you have so many different bodies to interact with, so many different officers, and you have labor inspector raids and stuff like that. So how do you expect these things to change in the coming year?
I honestly speaking, I do not have much idea about how these things will change, but I'm just hoping that it will make life of the HR manager a little easier. Simplification will happen. It will not be as tedious as it is today, and uh, things will be for betterment of the workmen as well as for the managers as well as for the government. It should be more of a simplified way.
Got it. What
But
is your
honestly speaking, I'm not very not thought about in detail as to what are the changes that are going to happen.
right? Okay. So, when we look at, this inspectors, rate, actually visiting and pulling up a lot of documents and all of that, did you have any experience of this? Although you worked with a very brand name company, so things might have been easier. But what's the, experience of HR managers when dealing with, labor inspectors visiting? And we hear stories of money being demanded for, not creating problems and stuff like that. So how do HR managers deal with this thing, and what's the experience generally?
So, what I would say, if you have done your homework, then there's nothing to be scared of. If you're up to date with your records, registers, and if you're not doing anything which is unethical, unfair, or unconscionable, then you should not be scared of anything. So, what I would say, in our company, there was never any scare of a labor inspector visiting us. But just generally, if you are compliant with most of the things, then uh, things should be comfortable. But yes, labor laws itself, a lot of things depend on interpretation of the laws. How a labor inspector will interpret a particular clause will can differ from a person to person, or from state to state, or from place to place. And I should not say, but yeah, most of the labor inspectors are doing their business and thriving on interpretation of the laws, and they really mess up things when they go on inspections.
Okay, all right. So, we have got a bunch of questions, but before that, I wanted to ask you one question from my side. So, recently there was a change in the Maternity Benefit Act, under which women were given the benefit of the maternity benefit increased from 20s. I think it was increased to almost 6 months, and
Yeah.
3 months. Yeah. From 3 months to 6 months. And recently it has come under a lot of criticism saying that this is actually preventing people from being able to employ women into the workplace. I mean, it worked out fine for people who work in the government sector, etc. But there is a huge problem people are facing in other sectors, because the sectors where people work long term, it is fine. Like if somebody is working for 10 years or 5 years in a company, then you can consider giving them 6 months of holidays for maternity benefit. But if somebody is working for, there are many industries where women work for 1 year or work for, it's they keep shifting jobs, especially these days in the new economy, kind of companies, software companies, media companies, BPOs. People join and leave all the time. They change cities, they change jobs. You'll see that somebody has changed, 5 jobs in 6 years, and these are very common things now. And so in that light, and especially like somebody, a mother is probably going to be aged between 25 to 35. These are like at a time when they are relatively junior in their career, and and the problem is being that employers are sometimes not employing married women, and they're apprehensive that somebody can join and for 6 months and have a baby and then leave the company after 6 months. So in that case, the company is left in a very bad situation. So how do you see this situation, and what is going on in your experience, and what are you seeing in the industry?
Yes, you're right, Ramanuj, that for big companies and where there are a number of people working, this is not a problem. But in smaller organizations, this is a problem because now they are reluctant to take more female employees. In the age when we are talking about diversity and getting more people on board and gender balance, uh, this clause will definitely hamper the diversity and the gender balance agenda of the companies, because giving 6 months leave and then extended leave in case it is required, uh, things definitely get difficult for the companies. But still, that in the long term interest, it is beneficial both for the employees as well as for the companies. You should not see it from a very short term vision. uh, if you are extending this benefit, you are encouraging employer friendly, a women friendly environment within your organization. And definitely it's going to help you in the long run.
Sure. I mean, nobody, I think, is opposed to the idea that there should be maternity benefits, but there has to be some practical. Let's imagine there's a company which has 10 employees, and two of them or three of them are young women. And if out of those 10 people, one person goes on leave, then it could be like, a very suffocating situation for the company to actually pay for somebody who's not working for 6 months. And not only that, they are not certain about being able to retain these employees, because you can see BPOs, they have 70% exit, attrition rate a year. I mean, this is not HUL we're talking about. We're
Yes,
talking about
yes.
companies which have 50%, 60%, 70%. These are the realities of their business also. Or so in such circumstances, do you think, and this is, by the way, a huge sector of the company. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not a small number. I think Economic Times came up with a report which said that in certain sector the number of employed women have dropped after this particular rule. And it's not fully implemented yet, and government hasn't really gone out, trying to implement this law, uh, probably foreseeing some of the problems. But like you said, that I mean, do you think it's going to work out for SMEs and smaller companies, MSMEs? Do you think they should be given some sort of maybe
Relaxation.
relaxation in terms of this?
There have been a lot of talks on exempting the SMEs and the smaller companies from this, but I think these companies should look for their long term vision. And go for the policies, go for the uh, uh, women friendly and employee friendly ways of working, because as I said before also, it's this is going to help them in the long run. If they are not going to close down the company after a woman goes on leave, so if they're looking for a long term benefit, they should not, think on these short terms.
All right. So, what's your opinion on the current, the we have a number of laws related to workmen, but they are not related to the white collar workers. So you have this whole sector of people who are left without any protection. Of course, there are some employment agreements which might provide them some protection. There is Shops and Establishment Act which have some basic rules, but I mean, do you find that the rights of the employees are well protected in India?
By and large, yes. Labor laws that do not cover the service sector. Uh, there are laws for service sector as well, and by and large, the rights are covered under the Shops and Establishment Act, the Gratuity Act, the PF Act, and a lot of things. I don't think that there is anything in particular that you're asking, Ramanuj.
No, so there are certain issues around, like for example, I'll say, like, what if you are fired without any reason? Like if someone or somebody fires you because of you are from a certain gender or a background or a caste or a place. There's no law today which actually prevents you or protects somebody who's uh, let's say if a white collar worker in a company. Similarly, for a bunch of things, you can go to the labor court if you are a workman, but you
Mhm.
cannot actually go there if the civil court is pointing to you. So if your civil court is pointing to you, let's say you're earning above 1,000 times without any remedy whatsoever. Uh,
You're right. You're
anyway,
right
so
on
I
that.
have
Yeah.
got from a lot of viewers. So Tej Bahadur is asking, "Hello, ma'am. Due to some consequences, I'm unable to going." Okay, someone is saying great conversation is going on. Exact questions have been asked. That do you think to ask? Great. Okay, thank you, Tej Bahadur. PC Panigrahi is asking sound disturbance. Okay, so there's some sound disturbance. Somebody's complaining about that. Neha Roy is asking, what are the penalties for the company where internal committee doesn't have external member? I think this question was sort of answered by Smita. She said that there's a 50,000 fine, but beyond that, there's also if you are a repeated violator, then your business license can be cancelled. Right? Do you want to add anything to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. So another question we have from Neha is: you said that report has to be sent by ICC to employer. Who is the employer? The board of directors. Okay. Who's the employer? What did you say? I mean, exactly to whom do you send the report from ICC?
What is the question she's asking?
So when there is an ICC which comes up with a report with respect to a complaint, where do you send this report? Do you send it to the board of directors? Do you send it to the CEO? Do you send it? Who do you send it to?
So it is sent to the employer. So it can be directors in that case, or the CEO, as a setup of the company is.
Right. So the policy will probably specify that in most cases. If it
Yes.
doesn't, you send
Yes.
it to the.
Yes.
Ultimately, the board of directors is finally in charge. Like if
Yes.
nobody else is there, it's the board of
Yeah.
directors. Okay, so that answers most of our questions. Okay, there's one more question. How a white collar employee should protect themselves against termination on unreasonable grounds.
That Ramanuj you should answer.
Yeah, so see, the thing is that if you have if your salary is below 24,000 in most cases you can still approach the labor court. And so in those circumstances you might have some sort of a resolution, because you can labor courts still have a lot of powers in terms of, also it's actually a preventive measure, because if you go to the labor court, then the company would want to settle it rather than actually fighting it out most of the time if you have a good case. Apart from that, one option is always to, the usual problem is that not getting salary is one huge issue. Like you're terminated and not paid. This is a very common problem that we see. And if that happens, then you, to recover your money, you can always, there are a number of things you can do. You can file a criminal case for cheating or things like that. If you can establish any of those elements, you can also go to the civil court to claim it. If the money is above 1 lakh rupees or there are multiple people, then sometimes they're combining and going to, the claim has to be above 1 lakh. Then you go to NCLT and claim it under insolvency and bankruptcy code, which is a very effective measure to get your money quickly. That includes, the money includes any compensation, like if, for example, if there are certain compensations apart from your salary which is due, then you can pursue those also in that manner. uh, Apart from that, there is not really any remedy. Say if you are terminated without a cause, anyway most agreements have termination without clause, without cause clause. So that is a valid ground. I mean, a company or employer is entitled to fire somebody with a notice without giving any further reason for why they are firing. And this is approved in most of the uh, shops and establishment acts. The only requirement is that 30 days of notice has to be given, or pay in lieu of 30 days of work. So that has to be given. If a employer is giving that in an establishment, not in a manufacturing setup, but we are talking about other offices, shops, etc. Like offices are establishments. So in those cases, even schools, universities for that matter, as long as you are getting that 30 days of notice, you don't have much of a choice but to leave without any other remedy. Uh, if there is a, if there is a termination because say you are SC or ST, or these are the couple of categories of people who have some protection under the SC/ST Atrocities Act. But if you are a woman and you are terminated just because you're a woman, really there's no solution for that. Or if you're terminated because of your caste, other than SC and ST, there's nothing much you can do, or religion for that matter. In most countries around the world, there are laws which protect against such kind of discrimination or discriminatory firing or discriminatory treatment based on your background, but India doesn't have a law in respect to this yet. And that's quite sad because India has a lot of discriminations based on your background. So these are a few things that I can think of from top of my head that you can. Shagnika Ganguly has another question. Could you please talk about minimum wages and to whom they are applicable? Are minimum wages applicable to generalist job? Is it on basic or gross? Okay, you want to answer this question about
What is the
minimum wages?
question?
It's about minimum wages.
Yeah.
So she's asking if minimum wages affect white collar jobs ever. That is one question, and whether to whom minimum wages apply. She's asking, and also are
I'm
minimum
losing
wages.
you. Hello, I'm losing you.
Yeah, am I audible now?
No.
Okay, I can hear
Hello.
you. I can clearly hear you. Can you hear me now?
Hello.
Yeah, I can clearly hear you. Very clearly. It's
Hello.
working from my side. It's working from my side.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now, Smita? Hello. Okay,
Hello.
I think there's some problem. Smita is not able to hear us. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Can you hear me? Okay. So unfortunately, we have lost lost Smita, but I'm going to continue this conversation. I'll answer the question myself, and we are anyway towards the end of the discussion. So, what is the question is that about minimum wages. So, firstly, minimum wages apply to all jobs, and it applies on the gross payment. Like you have to, basic also. I mean, it applies to basic as well. But depends on the idea is that the total payment you get should be at least minimum wages, right? That could include all your emoluments, whatever may be there, but taken together it has to exceed the minimum wages threshold. Now normally the minimum wages was so less, 100 rupees, 150 rupees a day, that it did not matter to most jobs. Like if you are working in an office, even if as a class 4 staff, as a peon or anything, usually you are earning much higher than than a than the actual minimum wages. But now what is happening is that certain governments have increased the minimum wages so much. For example, the Delhi state government has increased the minimum wages. I think it is still under kind of process, but they have increased the minimum wages to 15,000 rupees, like basically 500 rupees per day. And this is a very high minimum wage compared to what people are used to, and this means that you have to pay at least 15,000 rupees salary to your employee. And there are obviously, that in Delhi there are jobs, especially like interns, and where there are maybe trainees, articles, and all sorts of people who are paid under 15,000 rupees per month, and that is becoming illegal. So there were BPO workers who were working for a job 13,000 rupees per month or 12,000 rupees per month. So everybody has to now increase the salary above 15,000. So even white collar jobs have been impacted by minimum wages in Delhi, but it is unheard of in any other place in India. But I'm guessing very soon things are going to catch up, and you will have a minimum wage which is on the higher side, and companies will have to actually think of complying with minimum wages. Okay, I hope that answers your question, and thank you everybody for joining in. Take care, all the best. Join us back tomorrow again. Good night.